Welcome back to the Fantasy Hockey Podcast. It's time to launch our free in-season toolkit. Now, it's going to come with a lot of things. I've been working on it for the last 2 to 3 weeks, and I'm so excited to launch it. Brandon's also helped me out with deciding what to put in there, what not to put in there, what might be useful. There'll be an add drop tool. There's a trade evaluator. It'll give you power indexes for your league so that you know exactly where you stand, even within certain categories. And this video is going to be all about teaching you how to use it, what's important, what's not, what can you touch without breaking, that sort of stuff. Now, if you haven't already, be sure to grab it down in the description or the comments below so you can follow along with this video. And also, if you have any questions or you find bugs or something like that, be sure to join our Discord where there's a tool channel, and I'm in there fixing things constantly if anything comes up, adding new features, or just answering any questions that you might have. So also, there will be a link to that also in the description or in the comments below. So without further ado, let's jump into the in-season tool. Okay, so let's start first with giving credit to where it's due, and that's natural stat trick, which is what the whole tool is built on. Now, in here, there is a credits part at the bottom on the welcome page that has their site, their Patreon, and their Twitter. Be sure to give them a follow. Consider joining their Patreon. And on top of that, also be sure to check out their site because they have way more stuff than what I show in here. So the first thing first that you need to do is you need to make a copy of this. Now, if you haven't already, you need to make a copy. If you request edit access, you will not get it. That's not how it works. You have to make a copy into your own Google Drive. So the first place you can go do that is on this sheet right here where it says make a copy. So there's a link right here that'll automatically make a copy for you. Once you do that and you make a copy, you can delete this tab and you'll never have to think about it again. Because the beautiful thing about this sheet is that it updates without you needing to make a copy. Every single day, you can come in here and get brand new stats for games that just ended. The stats actually, natural stat trick is really quick about putting games in. So you could technically come in here right after a game and see how it updated. And you can update it pretty much in real time every single night. So first things first, everything you need to edit is in yellow pretty much throughout the entire sheet. For example, you'll see the dates here. You'll see the start and end date. So this today's date is for the season long stats. So all you need to do is anytime you come into the tool, you're going to double click and there'll be a little calendar that pops up and you just put what the date is for today and everything will magically update for you. Now the same thing for these 2 days. So the start date and the end date dictates the custom date range. So you can set a custom date. Let's say you want to see the last 7 days, or you want to see the last 14 days, or for example, you want to see just last night's game. You can double click on the start date, and let's say I want to go back to, a week ago, right? So the 16th, and then let's do this to today. And it'll take a second again, but it'll update all the custom date ranges across the entire sheet. So the entire sheet will be referencing these 2 dates as the custom date range. So anywhere you see custom date range, it's all referencing these 2 dates here. And then 1920 season is all referencing today's date. So that's the end date. So if you don't update today's date, it might be behind. So then there's 4 players here, and all you need to do is it already has a validation, so you can't type names wrong. So say, for example, what's one of the hard names that people misspell? Let's say I want to look up Andreas Athanasiou, right? He shows up right here. There you go. And all you have to do is come down and click on him, and it'll populate all his stats. Now, what does it show? So it shows the 1920 season, so this season. It shows you the custom date range that you put in that you want to see, for example, his last 3 games played, and it shows you last year. Now, it shows you a ton of stuff. I mean, there are so many stats here. But the most important thing, too, is that there's a difference. So the difference here will show you what's the difference between his performance this year, all season, compared to last year in total. What's his pace like? So, for example, his average time on ice is down 4%. His point per 60 pace is down 58%. This should be a percentage. Let's fix that. His points pace so far is down 60%. His shot pace so far is down 30%. So this is really important because it'll just show you, okay, well, how is he doing so far in these things? And one thing to note is that shooting percentage and on-ice shooting percentage will be red. But let's say, for example, on-ice shooting percentage last year was 10%, and this is now 13%. This may be green and positive, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's a good thing. Too high on-ice shooting percentage is something to be cautious of, but nonetheless, it'll show here that it's increased. So that's just good to know. So just pay attention to the different stats. And again, you can join the Discord. I'm happy to explain any of these if any of them don't make sense. And the other thing is that if there's one that you don't care about or you don't use, for example, Brandon doesn't use shots per 60. He doesn't care for it. You can just delete it. It doesn't matter. That's it. So this explore page is really for you to kind of go through and compare players. Now, one thing you could do, for example, is you can actually add players to this if you want to. You can highlight these columns or these rows here, And if you just copy them all, and then you go down to like 27 here, and you just paste it in, you'll have a whole new player row. And so you can now look at more players. So say you wanted to have literally your entire team in this view, you could just continue to copy and paste until you get to 20 players, 16 players, whatever it is you have, and you could be tracking every single player on this sheet. And so you can keep an eye on all your teams. You can also make a copy of it, for example, and have one that's an explore tool and one that's your team page. But you don't necessarily have to do that. So anyways, this has everything you could possibly imagine. If there's anything I missed, be sure to let me know in the Discord so that I can get it added. It's not too difficult. Okay, so the add drop tool is really, really simple. All it is you put in 2 different players that you're thinking of adding or dropping, and it'll spit out so far for the season who's better, essentially giving you greens for where the player is stronger than the other player. So you can just quickly like scroll over and say, okay, well, Brent Burns is clearly better at all these things. How is he doing on power play points? Oh, he's tied, but he's getting more power play time on ice. Team power play percentage, sure, Schultz is higher, but, you know, they're pretty much equal. And so you can go through and pretty much see where people are better than another. So you can see their hits pace, blocks pace, and it'll do the same thing for the custom date range. So you can see kind of what's better for Brent Burns, what's better for Justin Schultz. And it should make add and drops a lot easier. And it'll also, if let's say someone's on ice shooting percentage or shooting percentage is out of whack, it'll actually turn red here and tell you, okay, you should probably watch out because that player has an over-indexed shooting percentage. Let's take that into the trade evaluator actually, which is really similar. So here, let's say you have a trade that encompasses James Neal and Victor Olofsson for Giordano and Sebastian Aho, and you want to compare the two. Now, this view gives you a quick comparison so that it's not going to tell you who wins. That's not the point of this evaluator. It's not to tell you this side wins the trade, this side does not win the trade. That is not the point. The point of this view is so that you can look at it and say, okay, well, let's see who's better where, and you can compare, for example, the expected goals. What about point paces? And then what it does, which is really, really important, this part is really important to remember, is that it tells you indicators whether someone may be selling high or selling low, for example. If someone is selling high, the shooting percentage, like for example, James Neal and Victor Olofsson, if you're getting a trade for them and you put it into the trade evaluator, this should immediately tell you, I think I may be getting swindled potentially. Shooting percentage is high on both. On-ice shooting percentage is high on both. Power play shooting percentage is high on both. What does that tell you? They are way over-indexed at the moment. Odds are that players like that, especially when you're in a trade where the entire side is all over-indexed in these specific categories, more likely than not, you're probably paying too much. And so that's really what this is for you to, one, be able to evaluate quickly whether a trade makes sense. And on top of that, it also allows you to see whether or not you may be getting swindled. And that's the whole point of the trade evaluator, is to help you evaluate and to give you indicators whether or not you may be getting, you know, a bad trade. So another thing to mention is, let's say you have more players in this. Over here, you can see these little arrows. If you unhide those, you'll see more entries if you want. And then you can just hide them, hide the ones you don't use, or if you're only using one. If you have more players in this, God forbid you're doing more than a 4-for-4 trade. That would be insane. You can copy and paste the same as we did on the other one, and it'll do the same thing. So let's rehide these really quick. So that's the trade evaluator. Now, another little cool, fun thing that I built, even though it's not that important, is this difference from projections tab. Is just a fun one. It's not really that useful, I'd say. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I guess it gives you a gauge on how much better someone is doing than what was expected of them. To me, Colin is one of the best projectors in the game. I don't even know if you call them projectors. That's literally a thing. I don't think you can call a person a projector. I'll have to talk to Brandon about that. He'll probably yell at me. So for Colin, pretty much what this does is you put in, for example, James Neal. I think he's one of my favorite expectations here, is 10 games played through 10 so far. What did Colin expect him to be at? And what is he actually at, right? So how many goals? How much more over-indexed is he in goals? How much over-indexed is he in points? What about shots on goal, assists, power play points, hits, blocks, pims, that sort of stuff. So it's a lot of fun. You can put in, for example, let's put in Milan Lucic here. Yeah, you can see Milan Lucic where he's at. He's actually below in points, but he's actually over-indexed in hits, blocks, and pims by a little bit, not by much, right? But by enough that it's kind of funny to see that he's doing better than what you expected. So This tool is not super important, but just fun to kind of, I like to use it as a gauge sometimes. For example, the James Deal, I'm like, he wasn't supposed to be this good, right? And it's just, oh no, he wasn't. And then the last thing here that is really cool, this is actually my favorite feature of the whole tool, and I've been using it quite a bit, is the Team Power Index tool. So what does the Team Power Index tool? Now, what it does is it'll spit out for each of your categories that you count a power ranking. Now, it only works with Yahoo, unfortunately, at the moment. I mean, you could make it work with other ones. It's just going to be a little bit manual. But let me give you an example of how easy it is with your Yahoo League to spit out power rankings. So let's take Hawkers, for example, which is in building winners. And let's go to team stats. So you go to League, team stats, and then you're going to be on this screen. Now, you want to go to totals. Then all you're going to do is from team name here, copy and paste down. That's it. That's all you do. You go to the in-season tool. You go over to the skater. So there's two imports. There's league goalie and league skater. So you go to league goalie, or skater, sorry, and you paste that. That's it. You just paste it. Look at that. You get power indexes. Now, what you can do after this is there's going to be a lot of categories so that everyone can have something. Be sure to delete the ones you don't count, and it'll be way cleaner. And you can update this every single week, for example, and you'll get updated power rankings as you go, so you know how much. Because, for example, you can look strong in goals, and you're like, okay, well, I'm high in goals, but how much better am I than the next person? For example, in this league, I am way better than the next person in terms of goals. And then in assists, I'm kind of right there. I'm close. So it gives you an idea of where do you actually need to target. For example, I can say here, okay, in this league, I can give up goals. I can do a trade for goals in which I get assists, and I'll probably come out okay at the end of the day. And then you can do the same thing for goaltenders. So if we go back to the team stats, let's go to goaltenders, and then go to total. Be sure you're on totals here, and then copy that league goalie leaderboard input up to this first one. You paste it, and boom. You got the same thing for goaltenders. Now, all the way at the very right, there is a power index. So it'll add these all up and give you what's the score. It's similar to the draft tool where it gave you kind of a leaderboard of how everyone's looking. But this is for in-season. So you can update this as you go and kind of follow along with your league and see how you're doing. And this is all sortable as well. So you can then sort by this and it'll kind of work. But the other thing to note is that will happen if you don't delete rows you don't use. So say you only have a 12-team league, just go in here and delete the rows you're not using, and that's pretty much it. So that's the tool. I mean, that's it. I'm so excited to see how people use it. I hope people enjoy it. I've worked hard on it. I think I use it for my own league. I've been using it for the past 2 weeks to make sure that it's something that's useful, something that I would personally use. So I hope you like it. Be sure to let me know what you think in the comments. Subscribe for future tools and videos. And other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.